Hi, I'm Christine Seeley, and this is my interpersonal communication project for HSCO 508. Next slide. Communication is the continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making. The quality of communication directly affects the quality of our life. Just as important as verbal messages are nonverbal messages, which include gesture, posture, and expressions, which are unspoken and more difficult to interpret than verbal messages. According to Peterson, learning to listen well encourages talkers to invite you into their lives. Next slide. There are two parts of communication, inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling is the receiving of information through the five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing or listening. Three continuous and simultaneous processes of inhaling are select, organize, and infer, which are influenced by our behavioral blends and background. While inhaling, we take in information that is based on our perceptions that are influenced by our own personal experiences and our own understanding of our place in the world. Next slide. The other part of communication is exhaling. Exhaling is the output or sending part of communication. Being open to others, self-expression, and assertiveness in communication are all part of the exhaling process. Exhaling involves self-disclosure, which is revealing to another person how you perceive and are reacting to the present situation, and giving any information about yourself and your past that is relevant to an understanding of your perceptions and reactions to the present. Next slide. Interpersonal communication is the type or kind of communication that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. As Rama Rahu stated in his article, the unique characteristics of interpersonal communication can be explored by tracing the meaning of the word interpersonal. It is derived from the prefix inter, meaning between, and the word person. So interpersonal communication literally occurs between people. On one sense, all communication happens among people, yet many interactions don't involve us personally. Communication exists on a continuum from impersonal to interpersonal. The heart of interpersonal communication is shared meanings between people. We don't just exchange words when we communicate. Instead, we create meanings as we figure out what each other's words and behavior stand for, represent, or imply. Meanings grow out of histories of interactions between unique persons. Next slide. My overarching goal is to be a more effective communicator, become a level 1 empathetic listener, to refrain from interrogating questions, and to be used by God, who has called me to minister to others through the counseling profession. Next slide. Enlarging the conversation. The art of enlarging the conversation stems from the ability to keep the conversation growing and deepening. In order to keep the conversation moving forward, I must be a good listener. Stewart introduced the idea of nexting, which is doing something helpful next, responding fruitfully to what's just happened, taking an additional step in the communication process. As Peterson states, if no one listens or cares, the wonder of the incident somehow diminishes. Next slide. My background consists of coming from a middle-class Christian family with 2 full-time working parents. I have 1 older sister and a best friend that I met in 3rd grade. I lost my right eye at the age of 11 to a disease and then married my high school sweetheart. We have 3 sons and a daughter-in-law. I'm a huge soccer fan, and my life motto is faith, family, fun. Next slide. There are 4 basic personality types. Understanding the 4-quadrant model of basic human behavior often explains why people do what they do. These insights can make the difference between right and wrong responses and the best or worst behavior in any situation. These types, also known as temperaments, blend together to determine your unique personality. They help you understand why you often feel, think, and act the way you do. This graph summarizes the four temperament model of human behavior. Next slide. My personality type is S, and my behavioral blend is CIS. My strengths are caring, loyal, humble, dependable, compassionate, serving, perceptive, faithful, and consistent. My weaknesses are that I don't like change, I can be judgmental and resentful, I can feel insecure, fearful, I'm shy, I can't say no, and I'm afraid to take risks, and I'm indecisive. Next slide. The influence that they have on my conversation are the positive influences are that I care about others' feelings, I will be a dedicated listener, I am a faithful friend, and I easily forgive. The negative influences on my conversation can be that I can be easily offended, I am afraid to speak in front of people, I am poor at quick decision making, and I can be judgmental. Next slide. Potential barriers to my personal communication. These may include self-sabotage, fatigue, biased listening, the flat brain syndrome, fear of disclosing myself, and external distractions. Next slide. Solutions to my barriers. Pay attention to the feeling of self-sabotage and engage in identity conversation. Rest, listen at level 2, take notes if needed. Be aware of any biases and work towards level 1 listening. Reduce emotional disturbance, clarify thinking, increase self-confidence, and build supportive friendships. Be proud of who God created me to be more confident. And finally, use nexting to keep the conversation flowing. Next slide. Noise pollution. Noise pollution can come in two different forms, the internal and external. Internal noise pollution. This is anything inside of oneself that would distract from listening effectively. Some examples of internal noise pollution are biased thinking, lack of concentration, green flag words, or emotional reactions. External noise pollution. This is anything that is making noise that could distract the listener. Some examples of this would be street noise, people talking, music, the hum of the refrigerator, the room being too hot or too cold, or even my kids' video games. Next slide. Solutions to noise pollution. Solutions to internal noise pollution can be summed up by learning to be an effective listener. We must be aware of our tendencies toward any biases and triggers that may cause us to allow our minds to be polluted with noise. As Burley Allen stated, effective listening involves not only tuning into others, but tuning into ourselves. Solutions to external noise pollution are more dependent upon where the conversation is taking place. Find a quiet place, turn off the TV or radio, rid the room of distractions, and make the other person comfortable. Personally, I believe that prayer would be a great solution to both internal and external pollution. God says to ask and we shall receive. Let's begin by asking God for clear minds and a quiet environment. Next slide. My action plan. My action plan to become a more effective communicator includes, first and foremost, rely on the Holy Spirit to guide me in all my communication. To challenge myself to become more outgoing and less inhibited, increase my confidence, work on being less judgmental and resentful, move towards a level 1 empathetic listener by being aware and in the present moment, acknowledging and responding, not getting distracted, paying attention to the speaker's total communication, and suspending my own thoughts and feelings. Finally, avoid the flat brain tango and implement the use of the talker listening card. Next slide. This class has taught me a lot about myself, including the strengths and weaknesses that I have in my communication skills. I will now be able to take this information and implement it into my future conversations and hopefully be more successful in my communication with others. Thank you.